Hey, gang, Molly here. What you're craving? Solo pod day. I love a solo pod, especially when I'm getting so many questions about things I should talk about. Make it easy for me, friends. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it's July when we are recording this. It is 2021, and we are all getting back into life post COVID. And so there's a lot of travel going on and a lot of people feeling like confused, overwhelmed. I think there are some people who are coming out of COVID and are like, okay, I really want to start to deal with my relationship with food. And then there's some people who have really dealt with their relationship with food during COVID. Change is hard. Can we let's just put that up front. So today we're going to talk a little bit about traveling, changing environments, because here's the thing. When it comes down to it, we don't want the food to control us. We don't want to be in a controlling relationship with food. That getting to that place may take time and energy and thought and flexibility. And we're going to talk about all of that. But at the end of it, if it was my goal that I got to make for you, I would say, I just want you to have a big, beautiful life and a loving relationship with food and a loving relationship with yourself that comes with twists and turns and imperfections. Different podcasts per different time, but that's actually the imperfections actually where we grow and we learn and we change. So it seems like travel is a really important thing to be talking about. I'm usually sitting here having these like deep conversations on the solo podcasts, but there is something really functional about talking about the how-tos of changing environment, traveling, and enjoying yourself. And it seems that many people, and I totally identify with this, find ourselves struggling when we're balancing, this new relationship that we're creating with food, or struggling with an eating disorder around travel, and balancing that with a travel schedule and staying in integrity. And first of all, I want to say, I'm going to give you a lot of answers because, like all relationships, there's actually not one answer. And you know what I say, if someone tells you that there's one way, run away. Because actually, there's so many variables when it comes to traveling that it's important to consider. When it also, oftentimes when we're traveling, I mean, not always, talk about the holidays. I'm going to family. It's not always like, yay. But if it's one of the trips that's like, yay, or maybe just life in general, like, I want you to go have fun. Like the last thing we want is for food to be stealing your joy and your excitement and your curiosity and whatever is happening and wherever you are. So I really want to put that up front, which is the primary purpose of travel usually is to go and do something fun or go spend time with people you haven't seen in a while. But I want you to keep that in the forefront of your mind, because certainly people who have struggled with disordered eating, and I think diet culture really encourages us to get like super obsessional about things. And sometimes that's really indicated. Like sometimes that's actually really important when you're going into high trigger situations, things like that. But if you keep the eye on the prize of the feeling, in DBT, in dialectical behavioral therapy, we call this cope ahead, and it's used with athletes all the time. And cope ahead says, well, how do you want to feel when this event is over? It's a great way, I think, creating a light at the end of the tunnel, like creating a belief and creating an idea of what you want it to look like, what you want, more so what you want it to feel like when you're traveling and when you're changing environments, is so key. And I don't want you to just think about it in your head. I actually really want you to think about it in your body. Like a lot of times I'm like, I want to feel, when I get back from this trip, I want to feel like I enjoyed it, like I had fun, like I laughed. And for me, because I come just from years and years and years of an abusive relationship with food and an abusive relationship with diet culture, like they don't get any more of my time and freedom. Like, no, 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 no. Like that ship has sailed. So I'm always like, I want to find a balance between honoring like my relationship with food and not over obsessing about my relationship with food. What I want to say about that is that's really dependent on where you are in your path. I think for me, I have years and years and years of this. So I'm really practiced. I'm like a professional athlete when it comes to travel. If you're just learning this, you may need some more guardrails. You may need some more limits. You may need some more planning, and that may feel really safe to you. It's really up to you. And the other thing I'll say 1,000% of the time is what a beautiful experience we get to do research in this relationship with food. So I'd also super duper stay away from this idea of I'm good, I'm bad, I'm right, I'm wrong. Every time we do that, we deny ourselves curiosity to understand ourselves better. We deny ourselves self-compassion, the things that actually really count. And we fall back into that diet culture of like, I'm a bad person because I ate, a churro at Playland. Like, let's not put morality on churros, if you don't mind. Thank you. So being in you have to really first, I think when you're traveling, the first thing you have to do is think about how you want to feel. Think about who you're with. And then I think you got to think about where you are with your recovery, like where you are on this journey, because that's really what being in a relationship is all about. So if you're like 4 days into this thing, your experience of this is probably going to be different than if you're 4 years into this thing or 40 years into this thing. So the main problem truly, and I guess I just said this, but I'm going to say it again. Can't stop, won't stop. The main problem is when we throw the towel in, when we say fluff it. You know what I mean? So if you do nothing else, and I think the other thing that diet culture has us totally immersed in is this idea of like it being good and bad. And I think that even the idea, because our brain shuts down completely. Like when you throw the towel in and when you say fluff it, like your brain is shut down. And I think that diet culture, it's like we say, oh, I'm going to this really nice restaurant. And, and then the first thing is like, oh, there's nothing for me to eat there. I'm just going to eat whatever I want, whenever I want, blah, 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 blah. And for many of us, and mostly people who are probably hanging out with me, that doesn't end well because it takes a hit on our soul and it takes a hit on our belief in ourselves because it's not actually in alignment with what we want to do. Like if you're like here and you're like, well, that really works for me, then that works for you. And I'm so excited for you. And you probably should go listen to like Dax Shepard because this might not be the podcast for you. Dax Shepard's great. Brene Brown, go listen to another podcast. But because if you're hanging with me, there's usually an impact to you going in and, gorging on everything. It doesn't make us feel esteemable and it doesn't make us feel good and it doesn't make us feel loving. And it's not loving behavior towards ourselves. And that's the whole problem. So I'm not putting judgment on what you're eating in there. I'm putting thought with you on how you're doing it, how it makes you feel after. And we're going to put some guardrails on if you'd like to. But what I want to say about diet culture, that it has us, oh my gosh, you guys, we are like hypnotized because it literally has us shutting down our brain. Like I have seen this so many times. This is really where me being a therapist for like 25 years and just been talking about this for so many years. It's like, if you go into like a business meeting and you have this like whole agenda, like, okay, this is like how it's going to go today. Okay, this is what I'm going to talk about. Got the PowerPoint ready. And you go into the business meeting and they're like, oh, you know what? We're shifting the pitch today. You're not like, oh, forget it, I'm walking out of this business meeting. You like turn on your brain and like you come up with some alternative ideas. But it's like if you go to Disneyland and then you found like this place where you can get a delicious chicken sandwich and they don't serve the chicken sandwich anymore. Our brains are like, oh, you know what? Just going to go have a whole pie pizza. And so part of this, I am a bit of a broken record, but I think the 5 things I say over and over again are rather important to all of us. But so to me, it's like, how do you want to feel? Number 1. Number 2, make this commitment to not give up on yourself. Make this commitment while you're going to enjoy yourself, while you're going to experience new and exciting things, that beyond a shadow of a doubt, you're going to keep your brain on, you're going to keep your heart open, and you're not going to turn on yourself. Because for many people, that experience of going somewhere and then just really going against your own values when you're making decisions with your brain shut down, you know what I mean? Like just this total fluff it event, it's really harmful on our soul. It really reinforces your diet drama and trauma, like in the biggest way possible. The question I pose to you when it comes to travel, and I think this is really new to a lot of us, is what would it be like if I went on this trip and I tried my best? That's what we lose. We lose that middle path of like, oh, if I can't be perfect, then I'm just going to throw this towel in. Like, this is just not going to work. And so when we're in traveling, it's like, I'm going to talk about this in a second, but when we're traveling, I mean, traveling is the hardest road because so many things are out of our control. So I want you to commit to keeping your brain on and to continuing doing this work on your relationship with food and then your relationship with yourself, because they so go hand in hand. And the beautiful part of this is that if you can be doing these, engaging in a big, beautiful life, right? Where you're experiencing more joy because food doesn't have you hostage anymore and you get to go try new things. It's a really exciting thing. And I always think like the behaviors that I'm talking about are like 10 years of therapy. Do you know what I mean? Like 10 years of therapy in like one action. Like you're at Disney World, the chicken sandwich doesn't exist. And you're like, stop the presses. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to step back a minute. If that plan didn't work, what is actually the next best thing for me to do? We don't think like this. We're like, oh, my plan didn't work. Okay, I'm just going to go harm myself with food. In a way, it's very simple what I'm saying, but I have to tell you the other thing, because like, I don't know. Back in the day, I was like a shame machine. I think that diet culture has given us these like big sweeping generalizations of us just like being perfect and that's the way it should be, that it never occurs to us that being good enough is going to be really great. And actually, when the plan doesn't go the way you want it to, finding that alternative plan is like the greatest act of self-love. It's like 10 years of therapy. It's like repairing a relationship with yourself. It's like creating a whole new behavioral snow groove. I mean, I should be like a travel agent right now because I'm just like selling us all like bipping and bopping around this country and like also enjoy your life. So I don't think travel is hard because I'm super well practiced. I don't say that to be a braggosaurus. I say that because you can be well practiced, right? Like, but I want you to use that piece of information in generosity to yourself, which is if you're just really new at this, you probably are going to have more guardrails, more ideas, like just a little bit more skills available to you, all of those things. And the other thing is like, I'm super opposed to us walking around all day. Hold on a second.